Hi everyone, Grant K here for the Smoke Learning channel. In this video, we're going to look at the workflow of round-tripping a sequence to Final Cut Pro 10. Now Smoke 2016 can conform sequences from Final Cut Pro 10 using XMLs. You would then perform any additional editorial or effects operations. So the entire production can be completed in Smoke. But there are sometimes a few instances where you would like to send the sequence back to Final Cut Pro 10. Perhaps you are doing cutdowns and versioning in FCPX while Smoke is used for finishing tasks. Or possibly you need to send the sequence to another facility that doesn't utilize Smoke. In either case, a flattened movie file might not be adequate. You want to preserve as much of the sequence's metadata as possible. So let's go through the workflow of exporting an XML to reconform in Final Cut Pro 10. Now there are a lot of options available to address different scenarios. Please take care to read the documentation for detailed explanations, as well as the limitations with each publishing option. So here is a sequence that was conformed and finished in Smoke. As I scrub through the sequence, I want to point out that some of the shots use time warps, but all the segments have various other timeline effects. At the end of the sequence, there is a multi-layered connect effects segment, as well as a composited title on the top track. Now I would like to send this sequence with all its effects back to Final Cut Pro 10. So I'll switch to the Media Hub and go to a folder where I want to publish the XML and the media. Now to perform the export, you can either right-click on the sequence clip and choose to export, or simply drag the clip into the file window of the Media Hub. The Media Export window appears. If you wanted a flattened movie file, just choose to export a movie and choose whatever codec settings you need. However, to output the sequence as an XML, choose to perform a sequence publish. If you open the format presets, there are a range of options to choose from. Towards the bottom, you will find the XML options for exporting to Final Cut Pro 10. I particularly want to focus on these three options for exporting an XML with all tracks. In other words, these options will not flatten the structure of the sequence and maintain all the edits. All three options will export the XML in the same way, but the media settings will vary. The first option is to export the XML with uncompressed media. The second option is to export the XML with ProRes media. And finally, the third option is to export an XML with no media. All these presets can be customized, but your choice of media should be based on the recipient application. For example, Final Cut Pro typically favors ProRes and Avid Media Composer favors DNx HD. For this example, I'll choose to export an XML with ProRes media. Now show the advanced options to refine the settings for the media. The XML is set to include all video tracks and audio tracks. Beneath the naming settings, you will find all the options to control the media. Firstly, if export video and export audio was disabled, only an XML will be exported. In this workflow, the XML will only refer to the original media outside of Smoke. And internally generated media, such as color frames, hard commits, or even connect effects, will not be exported as media. And since the media doesn't exist, you will see a missing media message for those segments in Final Cut Pro. So if you just want to push editorial metadata between applications using original source media, then just export the XML. This is one of the presets already available. If you want to take into account the media that Smoke is generating, as well as transcode the media into a common format, then choose to export video and audio. Now the rule is that the format needs to match the XML. XMLs require QuickTime movies and AIFF files. So you are prevented from choosing image sequences since this is unsupported in Final Cut Pro X. Now, in terms of the exported media, you have two options. The settings in this preset are set to use original media. This means that copies of the original media will be generated and all effects will be stripped out. The two exceptions are time warps and connect effects segments. They are purposely committed in order to keep the sequence timings. So you can think of this as a form of consolidation, and there are 10 frame handles for the original media as a default. The other option that I'm going to use is Use Media with Effects. Now all the finishing was done in Smoke. I want to keep everything that I have done, as well as the structure of the sequence. In this case, frame handles will possibly be ignored since they are not rendered as part of the effects of each segment. Keep all tracks means that we keep the structure of the sequence. Now you could go to the movie options and change the flavor of QuickTime Movie if required. Finally, I'd like to enable Use Top Video Track to ensure everything is included in the sequence publish. And the option is there to either use background or foreground exporting. I'll choose foreground and press the export button. Whether the media is rendered or not, Smoke will process any effects in the sequence to ensure a proper export of all the necessary media. Once that is complete, Smoke will begin to export each segment and associate it with the newly generated XML. This will take time depending on the length of the sequence. So let's jump ahead to the completed publish. So in the destination folder, a new folder has been created based on the sequence clip name. When you enter into that folder, you will find the XML as well as another folder containing all the new media files for the conform. Now let's jump into Final Cut Pro X and see how it conforms as a project. In Final Cut Pro X, you go to the File menu, choose Import and select XML. Navigate to the folder containing the XML. Select the XML and click the Import button. FCPX imports the XML and performs an auto-relink to the new media. A new event and project is created based on the exported sequence's name. When I open the project and skim through the sequence, you can see how we have brought this into Final Cut Pro X with the edit structure in place. If the media was moved to another folder not seen by the XML, just use the Final Cut Pro Relink tool and point it to the relocated media. Just so that you see there's a difference, here is the sequence that was exported with Use Original Media. Notice how the timeline effects and connect effects were baked in, but the rest of the sequence shows the original exported media. And finally, here is the result of the XML-only publish from Smoke. Notice that the edit links back to the original media. But as I mentioned earlier, effects such as time warps and connect effects do not link because no media was exported when you only export the XML. And this is the timeline we did earlier, including the media with effects. Please ensure that you read the Smoke documentation to understand what is supported, as well as the limitation with the Final Cut Pro XML publish. Comments, feedback, and suggestions are always welcome and appreciated. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to the Smoke Learning channel for future videos.